Hey guys, welcome back to the Conservative Echo Chamber. My name's Jonathan. Hey, we're here to do a response to a video by Zoe of Zonation. Link is down in the bottom if you want to watch it. Zoe actually does a short video concerning libertarians and some of the disagreements that he has with them. And unfortunately, one of the disagreements he has with them actually is that he's getting a lot of mail from them that is very racist. And I wish I could actually say more about this, Josh. I can't. Because I honestly don't know a whole lot of I consider myself to be a very right-leaning libertarian, but most of the libertarians I know have not really shown a whole lot of anti-Semitism or okay, I do know a lot of libertarians, or I know a few, but none of them have ever been anti-Semitic in their words or have shown a predilection for using racist slurs. So maybe, I don't know, Josh, has your experience been different?
Okay, a few things you got to keep in mind. Zoe is in California. There's a big difference between the standard libertarian that we understand and the California libertarian. Remember, in California, Bill Maher is considered a libertarian. Keep
Bill
that
Maher
in
is
mind.
full of crap. Okay, well, yeah, but I will point out, as fairness to Zoe, that this isn't just like people knocking on his door. This is also responses through email, through comments on YouTube videos, etc., which spans the entire country. Unless like he's singling out a specific demographic, which I don't think he is.
I think one of the problems that Zoe is having is the same problem that everybody else in the country is having. What is a libertarian exactly? The moment you try to define libertarianism, 1,000 angry libertarians will descend on your comment section saying, "That's not libertarianism! What are you doing?"
Yeah, okay, I will agree with that. And I will also say, in agreement with Zoe, that if there are racist libertarians and people who call themselves libertarians who are messaging Zoe in the way that they are, that he is right that, at least for his experience, libertarians are being painted in a poor light. And that, I know that I have a tendency to confront people saying really racist stuff. So I'm hoping that other libertarians are as well. But what was interesting to me is that Zoe brings up what libertarians believe. What he says is that libertarians believe that government should only strive to enforce liberties. And I don't know about what other libertarians believe, but so I'm going to speak only purely for myself and say that rather I would kind of tweak that statement and say that libertarians believe that government should only enforce, man's natural rights. And among those, I would include the right to live. I would agree with him though that I don't prize the right to life necessarily above other rights like the freedom of speech. Specifically because there were a lot of founding fathers who were actually willing to give up their right to life in order to ensure the rights, the other liberties and the other freedoms for other people. What was that famous saying? Give me liberty or give me death.
Patrick Henry.
Yeah. So there are people who believe, and maybe Patrick Henry would have been today's libertarian. I don't know. Maybe he was an aberration.
Speaking, he was.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Well, you see, it gets a bit muddled just because the term back then, we tend to think of it more as the classical liberal. However, the reason why we don't use that term these days is because the modern liberal is to take liberties with something. The classical liberal is to liberate from something. And so, because it got extraordinarily confusing, that the distinction is made between the liberal who takes liberties with, for example, takes liberties with the law, and the libertarian who liberates from something. And so Patrick Henry would have been, in many ways, considered a classical liberal or libertarian.
I'll tell you what. I think I agree with you. I actually want to turn this conversation, though, to what Zoe actually covered for about 5 minutes in his video, which is actually drugs. And what is considered one of the common libertarian beliefs is that we should make drugs legal. And it's weird because some of his objections, I think, are very poorly done. I think he could have done a bit better. But honestly, I happen to find I personally am against the drug war. I believe that drugs should be legalized. So I'm gonna put that out right out at the beginning. And ironically, my opinion was changed in 5 minutes flat. From being against drug legalization to being basically against the drug war that's currently going on, based on some very simple things. First off is that, no matter what happens, I think if we legalize, drug usage, then there will be people who take drugs. Obviously, drugs are still a problem despite it being illegal, so no matter what side you fall on, there's still going to be people getting harmed. But what I believe is that when you legalize drugs, it's going to be the same thing that happens with prohibition, which means that the drug cartels bringing up drugs from Mexico are going to have a lot less power, because once you legalize drugs, then for every state that legalizes, you'll be able to have basically marijuana available in Walmart right next to the tobacco and cigarettes. But as far as overall harm done, I would much rather have, one or two extra people, assuming that actually happens, one or two extra people, smoking marijuana than, having Arizona be what I believe it is the current kidnapping capital of the entire United States. There's a reason for that, and it has nothing to do with the fact that it's located right next to Texas. It's because it's on the border of Mexico. Right now, you have to be warned if you go down near the border of the United States in certain areas. You're told, watch out because you may be shot by Mexican cartels. Like that should not be a problem.
And once you're able, should be a little more than a road sign for that, but maybe that's just me.
Right. So, you have people getting caught in the crossfires. There are people getting killed who are totally innocent, whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time, because the drug trade right now is controlled by cartels and gangs. And there are people being killed because of that. But one of the things that Zoe actually mentions is that, if we legalize marijuana, that will require it to be regulated, and that will cause more government. First off, no, because right now we already have had a massive expansion of government due to the drug war. If we get rid of that drug war, there will be a lot of government resources that are no longer needed. I don't think that marijuana, obviously we're talking about doing a lot more than marijuana, but marijuana is the primary drug here, right? I don't think we need to worry about marijuana becoming any more regulated than, say, tobacco. And if we make it as freely available as tobacco, you're not going to have it become, a medicine that doctors have to prescribe. Literally, doctors will just tell patients, hey, go buy a pack of marijuana cigarettes. That's it. There's a lot of times when you go to the doctor and the doctor will say, hey, just go to the store, buy this household item, and do X with it, and that will fix whatever temporary problem you have. It's a really small problem. All right, that was it. He didn't need to write a prescription because the item was just freely available. And I believe the same thing is going to happen with marijuana if we make it freely available. Now, you have the problem that Zoe also brings up of the government has to force the states. I don't think the government already has to force the states, but if we're going to bring up that issue, keep in mind that already happens because the government holds marijuana as being illegal, but California doesn't. And so you have this weird situation in California where you're allowed to sell marijuana, but you're not allowed to grow it. So all the growers have to live in fear of feds coming down on them, even though the state itself has no issue. So honestly, even though I don't like most drugs, especially hardcore drugs, people are still going out and getting high. People are still going out and taking drugs. And by making them illegal, all you're doing is you're giving power to drug cartels, maybe slowing down the addiction cycle slightly. It's not like by having this drug war, you're preventing people from A, doing drugs, or B, getting high. All you're doing is creating a market, a black market for drugs, giving power to drug cartels, and also making the drugs more expensive, at least in the short term. If you allow, if there's companies that are brave enough to do it and grow cocaine, heroin, marijuana, the prices of it will go down, which means at the very, very least, those drug addicts who end up going and stealing and committing other crimes to go get the prices, because those prices will be much more competitive, because you'll have it be much more readily available, they won't have to steal as much, which is a terrible benefit, I guess, to have to say that. But it will be one. So you're going to have less crime, you're going to take away power from drug cartels. The only thing you will really do is allow the drug user to continue to do what he was already doing anyways. That's pretty much it. And that's not a good thing. I would prefer if there was some magic way to get people to stop taking drugs. I think they are highly damaging. But the fact that most citizens go into Walmart and other stores and live functional lives without taking drugs, even though there are drugs available that you can get, that you can concoct with just a little bit of knowledge from the shelves of any Walmart, Home Depot, Target, that are very potent. The fact that people are able to go through and not do that points to the obvious conclusion that if we make these drugs legalized, we're not going to have a huge problem like Zoe thinks that we will, or that many think that we will. What do you think, Josh?
All right, I do understand Zoe's perspectives on this. For example, Zoe was a drug abuser way back when, and so to say that he understands...
Let me make sure that is something that he's already publicly announced. It's not like you're letting some private thing out of the bag.
Well, if he privately said it on a YouTube video, then that's another issue.
Okay.
Yes, he admitted, and he says that he is well aware of what it does to your brain and how it tends to nurture the dependency mentality in a person. And
I do agree with that.
Correct. So I think the real question comes down to, when do we do it? Because one thing I think I wish Zoe talked about more is, like you said, there is no need for legalizing marijuana to result in more regulation. I think the argument is more it will happen because right now they create regulations, don't follow the ones that they don't feel like following, so it'll simply be another pile on. And so that is something we're going to have to address. If you want drugs to be legal, whether or not you want to use them or not, it is going to take significantly more work than we want to do. This isn't something like cutting taxes where you can just say, okay, cut, done. Cut spending, cut taxes, done. That's easy. That's something you can do immediately. Change like this will take a lot more work and a lot more time than any of us care to admit. I am no fan of the drug war. I hate seeing our people being shot in the streets over this. At the same time, I also recognize that our society, our culture of dependency isn't ready for more dependency-nurturing substances to be readily available. We need time to adjust. And so one thing I've discovered looking in the past is that with, for example, alcohol, we had time to adjust as a society because at first high alcohol content drinks just wasn't available to us for most of our history just because that requires some pretty fancy technology to get it to the levels of, let's just say, moonshine. It takes a lot of work, a lot of resources, and so for a lot of our history, we just never had the chance to do it. So we had time to adjust, like, oh, I can make it just a little bit stronger now. Okay, so I can only drink this much. Okay. So once we got to moonshine, we'd already had several thousands of years to get ready for it. Drugs...
And several thousand years of liver preparation as well.
No kidding. You ever try introducing alcohol to a population that never really had it before? That happened in northern Alaska, as I recall. You know, local tribes tried alcohol for the first time. They hadn't had it because, well, how do you exactly make alcohol in that climate? And they were dying left and right because none of them had time to adjust.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, seriously. In fact, it was one of the reasons why the natives up there hated settlers who were coming in there. You think, how could people possibly hate Canadians? Canadians were coming in. It's like, how could anyone hate Canadians? Oh, they brought up the beer. Okay. That's why. All right.
I'll tell you one thing, Josh. Canadian beer sucks.
I don't know, but it was too much for those guys to handle it, so I don't know what to say. So, if you were to legalize it over time, you could do it over the course of 4 years, but I tend to say 10 just because it's an easy number to remember. It tends to outlast most of the term limit careers of any particular politician. So that way... and
well, see, the only problem is you would need to keep the momentum going between senators.
No kidding, which is why the best way I can see this happening is a multiple direction attack. If you were to attack from all sides, for example, one side defund sections of the FDA. If not,
well, let's not get too deeply into actual stuff.
Oh,
into actual tactics here.
All right, just the bare bones basics. What you would have to do is you would have to legalize it over time, over the course of, like I say, 10 years. Give society time to adjust to the idea, okay, these substances are dangerous, like gasoline. It took us a while to get used to the idea, oh yeah, gasoline explodes!
What?
So, well, yeah, I mean, we used to mop our floors with gasoline. It took us a while to realize, oh, it may shine the floor quite well, better than most cleaning products today, but it has a nasty habit of catching fire.
I'm going to talk about that wonderful thing that happens when you inhale too much gas vapor.
Yeah, that too.
Although
and so we didn't
always
actually need any government regulation to tell us not to do that. All it needs is to happen once in your field of news, and with mass media, that's pretty much everywhere. All you need is one example of it. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, probably shouldn't do that. Then you reduce it to just the thrill seekers and the dependency-minded, who, while they're still too high, a lower number than it would be otherwise.
So yeah, I'm actually... One thing that was surprised me was Great Britain was able to vastly lower the drug addiction problem they had actually by allowing people who had proven drug addiction to get their drugs through prescription, which is not something I would be a fan of ideologically, but it does seem to be working. And if that is a necessary in-between countermeasure, I would also be okay with that.
That is an example of something we could do in the interim. One idea I thought is cocaine is easily one of the most dangerous drugs out there. I used to drink it in my tea while hiking around in the Andes. You need it at that altitude. At 14,000 feet, a little coca is exactly what you need to get over.
He's talking about the leaf being brewed. He didn't just take tea and dump the powder in. That would be a little stupid.
In that concentration, it wouldn't do anything but make you sick. So the people snorting are like, dude, you're an idiot. What are you doing? No, you drink it They're only micrograms of cocaine. Literally, micrograms is all you need to get the effect you need to get through it.
Right.
And so that would be an example of safe, appropriate usage. Get in a lab, allow maybe a few permits for a lab here. All right, you guys can import it to run tests, make it safe, and once you come up with a safe product, market it. Hooray. Then by the end of a predetermined time limit, because usually it would happen faster than the actual time limit.
Anyways.
Long story short, drugs, no question, are harmful. Drug war is arguably worse. The best we can do, if we are going to legalize, figure out the best way, when to do it, when's the best time, what do we need to do, culturally, politically, to get ready for it.
Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I do agree. I think the amount of damage, especially to innocent people, will be far less once we get rid of the drug war than any damage that may be incurred by the legalization of drugs, even hard drugs.
It's hard because while I do agree with a lot of what Zoe says, we do have to deal with the reality of the drug war and the reality of government overreach. And right now, while we can't stop all of government's overreach, because overreaching government overreaches, that's just the nature of things, we can at least address this.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Yeah, and I do agree with a good deal of what Zoe says. I mean, he definitely has a very unique flavor to how he approaches things. I'll give him that. I'm hoping at least he sees, at least from this conservative libertarian's perspective, that I have no hatred for him. And I think he makes a lot of good points. But at least as far as the drug war is concerned, I think the best thing that we could possibly do is to eliminate the drug war. At least get rid of all the victims who get caught in the way, those innocents who get caught in the way of the drug war by way of the cartel.
If we just stuck the money going into the drug war and just used it to secure the border, keep the drug cartels from coming in, that might solve up the big...
All right, so this is
making too much sense. We have to end this now.
So this has been John and Josh. We're the Conservative Echo Chamber, releasing podcasts occasionally, probably weekly. All right, so glad you listened to us. We'll see you guys later.
Thanks,
Peace.
guys.